Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Wim Lou. You are listening to the Raptors Reaction Podcast, presented by Betway. For all your sports betting activities, hit the QR code that you see here on the screen. Obviously, a bit of a unique circumstance here as we are going audio only today. Very special circumstances. Number one, we got into San Francisco for All-Star Weekend pretty late. It is now 12 o'clock Pacific, so that's 3 a.m. Eastern. And, the Raptors game ended, 9:30 Eastern. So, we are obviously missing on the live element, also just due to the late circumstances and, quite frankly, how exhausted the entire Hello and Welcome crew is right now. We're going to kick it old school and just go audio only. But yeah, Raptors lose tonight, 131-108. It was certainly one of those, the All-Star break is coming up, and the Raptors are 17-38. So, when you are also compounding that with the fact that they're playing the Cavaliers, who continue to lead the Eastern Conference, 44-10, sending multiple players to the All-Star game, their coaches at the All-Star game, it was at least the Raptors made no pretenses. You know what I mean? Like, the Cavs were they jumped all over the team. The Raptors were down 41-17 after the first quarter. It was not close. It was never close, and it remained that way until the very end. Quite frankly, it was going to be a fairly noteworthy game until the very end when Tristan Thompson decided to make himself the main character of a game that nobody really, quite frankly, was that invested in. When he decided to go in for a dunk, but quite frankly, that's not the most important thing. That's not the most important thing. I'm going to give you three things from this game that if you missed it, you may want to go back and check it out. But again, this is one of those where if you missed it, you're pretty lucky to have missed it. So number one of the three things, RJ was really sharp in his return from injury. So he'd been out for the last week with a concussion. It's good to see that he's healthy and available to play. Just yesterday in Philadelphia, I remember just hanging around IQ, and we did the post-game press conference in the locker room, and IQ had already broken the news that RJ was going to play today, so that's all good. But more than anything else, it's great to see that he was cleared and he was able to play. I thought that RJ, despite the game being pretty difficult otherwise for pretty much everyone else, he actually played a pretty efficient game. 27 points for RJ Barrett to lead not just all Raptors, but all scorers. Shot 11 of 18 from the field, so he did it efficiently as well. 2 of 5 from 3. 3 of 7 from the foul line. That's the one part where it's if he just hit a normal amount of free throws, he would be looking at a 30-point game, no problem. Gave you 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals as well. I thought he actually was pretty active on the defensive end, did a decent job on his assignment. He played a really good game. He looked really energized. I know that he'd been off for the last week, so maybe that helps to sort of re-energize. But more than anything else, we've seen RJ do this at home so many times, and especially when we look ahead to the future here with IQ rounding into form, Scottie Barnes having some great moments this season, including the Sixers game, which was a really great moment. And then you add Brandon Ingram to the mix, and today was his introductory press conference. RJ is very easily the forgotten man, and I feel like that's kind of a shame. Only in the sense that we shouldn't take him for granted. We really shouldn't. I know that it's not sort of what teams plan for nowadays in the NBA, is to have a shooting guard that goes to the rim a lot and doesn't shoot particularly well, doesn't necessarily create their own shot. And again, you could pick holes at RJ's game all day, and you could be justified in doing it. I'm not saying that any of that's particularly wrong, but I think we're missing the fact that he's been the Raptors' leading scorer all season, and he plays hard. He consistently finds ways to score, and that scorer's mindset is very, very useful for the team. Now, again, it wasn't useful enough to beat the Cavs, but I don't think anything the Raptors could have done tonight would have beaten the Cavs, right? So I think with RJ, his ability to drive to the rim is something that all the other guys should really take something out of. The fact that RJ can always find a way to get to the cup, whether that's sort of getting low and elongating his steps and sort of exploding to the rim last second, or finishing above the rim with some thunderous dunks, or the craftiness in which he's able to play the glass. I feel like the Raptors don't necessarily use the glass as much, and I thought RJ was able to use the glass a lot today. His footwork, his ability to sort of just get there. And I think more than anything else, it's not even just that. the technique is one thing, but there's a determination, man. It's just a mindset to go to the rim over and over and over again. And I think for RJ, like, I was really happy watching his performance tonight. Not only because he's able to come back from the concussion, but it, this is just ho hum. Like, this is just normal for him. I mean, in the past, when we first got RJ a year ago, we'd all be flipping out. Like, wow, look how efficient RJ was. 27 points, and he shot at 11 of 18 from the field. He knocked 2 of 5 from 3. I really can't ask for more than 2 of 5 from 3 from RJ. The free throws was whatever, but that didn't change the game. Like, a year ago, we would have been super hype about this. And maybe I'm just like, maybe I'm potentially misreading the temperature of the room, but we're so focused on, like, okay, what Scottie's doing and what the next crop of young rookies are doing. And, Brandon Ingram coming in here, that it's like almost a year in, when RJ's made such big leaps in his game, it still doesn't necessarily register and ring out the same way. But I mean, look, I think you got to give RJ the credit, and especially now that I'm thinking about sort of like where he is with the team, he did a great job tonight. So that's number one. Number two, once again, you saw some real signs of life from the rookies. It was really promising to see the second unit come in. The starters were the ones that, quite frankly, bled most of the points. When you look at their plus minuses, minus 17 for Mobo, minus 32 for Scottie, minus 12 for IQ, minus 31 for Grady. It was RJ minus 8, who was like the only guy who was like relatively competitive. But the Raptors second unit actually did a great job. Jamison battle spurred a bit of a push in the second quarter. Of course, every sort of like mini 10-2 run or 11-0 run or whatever, every time the Raptors did that, the Cavs just like literally just came back and did whatever they wanted, knocked down some threes, and Darius Garland just continues to just feast against the Raptors. Every time he plays the Raps, it's a tough look for the team. But still, Jamison battle sparked a bit of a run there. He had 11 points off the bench. I thought he did a great job. I thought Jacoby Walter continues to look really steady and really calm. This has been a really, really good run for him the last month of the season here. And, it shouldn't be overlooked that he doesn't really have bad games anymore, which is a really rare thing for a rookie. And then Jamal Shed, who I think gets the most of the headlines here for the fact that, like, he does end up stepping to Tristan Thompson in the end. But more than anything else, the rookies, I thought, actually gave a pretty good burst of energy. Unfortunately, the Cavs just have a lot of depth and a lot of energy. And, when you look at their roster, I mean, they re-upped at the deadline by upgrading from Karis LeVert, who was having a good season, to DeAndre Hunter, who, I mean, he was having a great season, man. And I think he's going to be a big piece for Cleveland, because this is a team that has needed a 3-and-D guy for the starting lineup in a long way. And he didn't even start tonight. It was Max Strus who started. He actually got the Cavs off to the huge lead in the first place by knocking out, like, I think he had 4 threes in the first quarter. Like, basically, it was a huge part of sort of getting Cleveland off to a great run. But more and more over the course of the game, you saw DeAndre Hunter play with the starting lineup. And the fact that he was able to just, like, spray away from 3 and just, like, almost run the show at times and just create that secondary layer of offense. Cleveland is just very blessed right now. They're in a really good space. The rhythm is great. They share the ball really well. They all know how to play off of each other. It's really impressive watching what Kenny Atkinson has done with the team. But honestly, the Raptors second unit also had a bit of a chemistry of their own. And that's part of what makes me really enthusiastic about watching them. In fact, it's like the rookies are starting to now take the places of a guy like Ochai Agbaji, who I didn't think had a particularly good game, even though the stats are fine, 15 points. But, it felt like, there could have been more done there. Grady Dick, who certainly struggled a lot. I know he's going to All-Star Weekend, and, he's been banged up a little bit recently too. But only 2 points tonight on 1 of 7 shooting for Grady. Like, a clear negative on the floor for the Raps. So, but, I also get it, though, because those guys are soft. Well, Grady's a sophomore, Ochai's in his third year. But, like, those guys are playing the most minutes that they've ever had in their career, playing the most significant roles they've ever had. And by the time it comes to the All-Star break, we're like 6 games in now, whatever. Like, I could see how those guys would be tired, and some of the rookies who have played less minutes, some of them who have played some G League time too, like, they have a little bit more in the tank. But, I mean, more than anything else, I just like whenever the rookies play and perform well. And then your third thing is just, this whole Tristan Thompson thing. But I think by now you've probably seen the social clip. It's probably the only thing that's, like, actually noteworthy from a game like this. I'll just describe the scene. But the Raptors obviously were losing this game. Again, they were down 20-plus the entire game. So it's the third stringers on the floor at the very end. And Cleveland ends up having the ball with the shot clock turned off. And they're up 129 to 108. And of course, Tristan Thompson being, the guy that he is, and let's be honest, if you're a Raptor fan, you've seen lots of Tristan Thompson. This man's been in Cleveland for a long time. He was there for the LeBronto years, and if you remember the history back then, like, this guy used to never rate the Raptors. Like, though I'm pretty sure he's always looked down at the Raptors in terms of, like, this is just a team that we own. And I remember even after they won the championship, and he brought the title to like a Tim Hortons or something, and he was still, he's like, nah, I don't rate the Raptors or whatever. It's like, this has been going on for like 10 years. So, like, not a surprise here, but he decides to just make an impromptu decision because he was looked to be dribbling out the clock, and just like, calling it a game. But then he randomly decides to go for a dunk at the end, which breaks one of those unspoken rules, right? We saw, for example, when the infamous example with the Raptors is when Lance Stevenson, when he was with the Pacers, did this against the Raptors. And that game, by the way, was, I think the Raptors were down 8. So, like, it was at least relatively competitive versus, like, this one where the Raptors were down 20 the whole game. But that image of PJ Tucker and DeMar DeRozan each getting into one ear left and right for Lance Stevenson, it's just a legendary moment, man. It's so funny seeing that thing. But yeah, similar kind of scenes broke out here. The Raptors do actually still have PJ Tucker on the roster, which is very funny. But of course, he's not with the team. And by the way, what's going to happen with that? I want to get to the bottom of that. What are the Raptors actually going to do with PJ Tucker? Because, I mean, you would assume he's going to get bought out. He'd be bought out. Like, what's the? Why are we just holding on to this whole situation? He's taking a roster spot for nothing. But nevertheless, it was Jamal Shead who ended up stepping to Tristan Thompson. And it wasn't like any sort of like physical fight or anything like that, but just kind of getting in his face and telling him, like, hey man, don't do that to us. Don't do that. Don't disrespect us like that. And then of course Scottie coming over, and Scottie always wants to come over and support the team, and more importantly, he likes to get in people's faces too. So, you got that aspect. It was, it was actually kind of fun to see at the very end there. Of course, Tristan, once he did it, I mean, it's funny because the whole Raptors line up behind what Jamal was saying. And Scottie was there, and RJ was there, and Darko said after the post-game press conference that Tristan's got no class for doing something like that. You know what I mean? Like, he knows better than what he did. On the Cavs side, I mean, like, when Tristan went for the dunk, their star player, Donovan Mitchell, just holds his hands on his head with a shocked face, like, well, bro, what are you doing? And even, like, when he was Tristan Thompson was, like, trying to go over and try to exit the same tunnel as the Raptors and, try to, like, I guess go back and forth with a rookie, which, like, dude, going back and forth with Jamal Shead, it's one of the most pure-hearted guys in the league, man. Like, seriously, like, what are you doing? He's just a good rookie with a good head on his shoulders telling you as a veteran that you shouldn't be doing that. And he's absolutely right to do that. But, like, Tristan tries to go that way, then he gets pulled away by, like, referees and assistant coaches or whatever. Then he tries to go again, and it's another rookie, his rookie, Jalen Tyson, on the Cavaliers, pulling him back once again. And it's like, dude, why are you getting pulled back by two rookies to make some sort of unnecessary fuss over a play that never needed to happen in the first place? Like, to be honest, like, I get it. And there's always, when these things happen, people can argue, like, if you really don't want them to disrespect you, then just play better. Then I'm like, okay, all right, you know what? That's fair, right? Like, the Raptors probably shouldn't have let Cleveland come into their house and just, walk them up and down the court, which, that might be more disrespectful than Tristan getting an empty dunk at the end. But also at the same time, it's like, dude, you just don't need to do that. It is one of the unspoken rules, man. It just is. Like, it just is. And it's always guaranteed to upset somebody. And I'm sure Tristan knew what he was doing because he loves to agonize the Raptors. This has been something like this has been in the works for like 10 plus years. So whatever. Tristan got his little bit of fame, but ultimately, it did not affect the game whatsoever. The Raptors were just in a completely different class. Honestly, the Raptors are kind of distracted all night because the bigger event that took place tonight was the introductory press conference of Brandon Ingram, who was announced as a member of the Toronto Raptors to the general media. He had previously done a scrum pregame or a practice. This is, I think, when they were in OKC, and a couple of the Raptors reporters were on the road for that one. But he was actually able to be generally introduced here. And of course, there's also the news that he's been freshly extended to a 3-year deal worth $120 million. He was out on the podium with Bobby Webster, which I thought was a little interesting. I mean, I thought we'd be Bobby and Masai, to be honest, but it was just Bobby and Brandon. So, it's been a lot of front-facing appearances for Bobby recently. I'm happy for him. I generally like Bobby a lot, but a couple takeaways from the Brandon Ingram Bobby Webster announcement. Number one, Brandon Ingram, his first thing he said was, you know what, part of what made me want to come here is that the Raptors want to make me an all-star again, and want to get me back to that level. And I was like, that sounds great, because I think that's the best possible outcome for this, is that the Raptors, with adding him and adding some real talent and ideally just a really much better bill of health next season, they're able to sort of be competitive. And of course, once you become competitive and actually stack up some wins, that's when you can get all-star appearances again. And look, when healthy, Ingram is an all-star caliber player. It just depends on sort of the caliber of the team around him and also his own personal health. But we know he can get there. And I liked him just being confident saying that outright. That was really nice to hear. The other thing he was asked was, where are you at with your ankle recovery? Because he has only played 18 games this season, and the Raptors did get a chance to evaluate him once they've traded him to the team. And he said, hopefully soon, but he has no timetable right now. And then, of course, when Darko was asked about this post-game, pre-game, Darko was like, look, there might be a chance he doesn't even play this season. So regardless, we all know that it's not a goal of his or I guess it's not a goal of the organization to win games the remainder of the season. They certainly want to play for the lottery balls. They cannot make that more clear than it already is without sort of just like outright saying it out loud and getting fined. But also at the same time, like this small part of me, I was like, just give me a little taste. Like I just want to see like maybe a couple of games here with BI and sort of like give me something to look forward to maybe in the last 2 months of the season. But of course, more than anything else, just get healthy, get himself right, and make the most of the situation here coming to Toronto. I think the other thing too, which was really interesting, because he, over the course of multiple questions and multiple answers, he kept trying to like hinting at something where it felt like Brandon really wanted a fresh start after playing with the Pelicans for the last couple of years. And, a couple of things that caught my eye a little bit. Number one, he was looking for a fresh start. He said that multiple times. Number two, he said he's looking forward to playing with young players who are professionals, players who show up on time, which I'm like, Zion did recently get fined for the fact that he was like late to planes and stuff like that. So I don't know, like maybe there's a reference there. I'd be lying to you if I was saying I was following the inner politics of the Pelicans of the last couple of seasons. He also kind of threw in a little bit of a jab where, he said, I think someone asked him about IQ and sort of about being like a shoot first point guard and, compare that to sort of CJ. And he was like, well, he's like, I don't know if IQ shoots as much as CJ, and kind of smirked about it. And then the fifth thing was, which I thought was pretty pointed, was, he said that the media coverage when you play for the Pelicans isn't great. You're not really talked about, and you kind of become forgotten as a market. Now, I don't think necessarily he was speaking about the specific reporters or the tone of the reporters that were down in New Orleans, but I think maybe just more in general, when you're playing for a market like that really isn't spoken about at all in the general context of the NBA, I could see how that can get a little bit frustrating when you're also a pretty good player who's hoping to get sort of the plaudits that you would typically get from being a really good player. So, overall, like I think for my general impression, and I've obviously learned more about Ingram since he's coming to the team, it seems like he's got some pretty close connections with everyone with the Pelicans. Like a lot of people were really heartbroken, and they shared messages publicly, and whatever. It might just be social, but I think he's a pretty genuine guy. I think people genuinely liked him as well. So I don't think he's like going out of his way to shade them. At the same time, though, I do think that he's looking for a better situation than he was in previously, which isn't exactly breaking news, but still, I do think that he was looking forward to a fresh start. And I think he's pretty excited about Toronto as that fresh start. Of course, Bobby was also on the podium. He answered a couple questions. I think number one, he said it was a no-brainer for us, which when he factored in the price that it made for the deal, and then also that Brandon's entering his prime, and then the age fits with the timeline of the team, he said it was a no-brainer. And I think that that's probably the strongest statement that he's given. He's, I suppose, justified the deal in other ways, but he's never just outright said it's a no-brainer. And I think, honestly, if you really got him in a one-on-one setting where he's completely honest, he would probably tell you, like, dude, when else are you going to be able to get a player this good for a price that low? So I think that for him saying in this moment here is probably closer to the truth of how he feels about the situation. That doesn't mean it has no downsides or no risk associated, but I think it's a pretty good calculated gamble by the team. And Bobby also kind of spun the block too, because he also kind of said that, this is a feature of the rebuild that was to have flexibility to make such additions, and that of course the Raptors have considered all the money implications that come with this. And he did say that there's a quote scenario, depending on where the Raptors fall in the draft, where they might have to adjust. Obviously, that's sort of the thing that I detailed in yesterday's show about just sort of like, if the Raptors get the number 1 pick with Cooper Flag, they probably will then be in a luxury tax. But again, that's a good problem, and it's not something that they can't duck out of. Like, literally, you could just move Ochai, and you'll be back under the luxury tax with Cooper Flag on your system. So, again, that was probably the bigger context around the game tonight, because people truly were not focused necessarily on the game itself. And it really took a bit of a stupid thing by Tristan Thompson to even bring attention to the game. So, I typically we would take your questions when we're going live, but I did mention on Twitter at least that I would answer a question or two on the show. So it is time now for the Tangerine Fan Inbox, and I want to let you know that Tangerine is the official sponsor of the Hello and Welcome podcast, official partner of the Toronto Raptors, foundational partner of WNBA Canada, NBA Canada, and of course they're not just fans of fans. They're not just fans of basketball, they're fans of basketball. They're fans of fans who, like me, are dead tired in the middle of the night, who bought Wi-Fi on the plane, which I gotta say was pretty low quality Wi-Fi. Like, the way I watched this game was basically like, if you imagine, taking the Raptors game that played tonight and you just applied it through a flip book, so you saw like maybe a second or two every 5 seconds, and just did that for a solid 3 hours, which was frustrating nonetheless. Not but again, they're fans of fans like me. And of course, if you're listening to this, it's down on your commitment. Fans like you are at the heart of what makes this game great. So this year, for the Raptors' 30th anniversary, the Tangerine is turning the spotlight from the court to the stands, celebrating the way Raptor fans support their team, because this is how we fan. To learn more, visit tangerine.ca/basketball. Okay, so I got 2 questions from the Twitter audience that I thought were pretty interesting. The first one was, do you think Scottie will benefit offensively around Brandon Ingram? And I think more than anything else, it's absolutely the case. I think that when they're both healthy, and ideally when RJ is healthy too, defenses are actually going to have to make a much more difficult decision as to sort of like, how do we actually cover all of these guys, and who do we assign our best defenders to? In this game, for example, DeAndre Hunter guarded Scottie Barnes a lot, even though he came off the bench, but he guarded Scottie Barnes a lot because that's their newfound stopper. He's 6'8", 6'9", got long wingspan, got pretty strong, all that kind of stuff. I thought Scottie actually did pretty decently in the matchups against them, but or like Evan Mobley. Who do you put Evan Mobley on, right? Like, right now, it's no question. Scottie's getting that toughest assignment, and maybe certain teams will come in with a more, I suppose, like, big brain strategy of like trying to stop RJ, because RJ does definitely do a lot of the scoring for the Raptors. But generally speaking, defenses have an easier time just sticking it on Scottie. With Brandon in the mix, I do think that they'll have to sort of make their choice as to sort of what to do with that. And of course, if you have Brandon who can be a primary ball handler for you, I think that opens up Scottie to sort of be an off-ball player for you, whether that's sort of easier looks from 3 by catching and shooting, easier opportunities in terms of screening for the ball and cutting to the rim, or even just the ability of Ingram to sort of break down a defense, compromise it, and then have somebody cut and be open. I think that's kind of generally good for everybody, but I think especially for Scottie, because it'll change a lot of the on-ball defensive assignments that he'll see. So, yeah, I think that's the whole idea, is to sort of get a guy who can help Scottie on the offensive end. And Ingram certainly has the profile to do that. Another question that we got was, if our starters are Immanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Brandon Ingram, Scottie Barnes, Jakob Poeltl, where does that rank in the Eastern Conference for starting fives? And I want to fully acknowledge that the Raptors are a 17-38 team, so it doesn't sound kind of crazy when you're talking a big game when, again, the Raptors are 21 games under 500 at the time of the All-Star break. But I will have to say, for me, there are only 3 teams that are like clear-cut for sure, when healthy, 5-man versus 5-man, more talented than the Raptors starting 5 in the Eastern Conference. Boston, enough said, championship roster, championship tested. Come on, man. I would love some Celtics slander, but this is just not the time for it. Cleveland, That's 5 really good starters now. I mean, they had 4 really good starters, right? 4 all-star caliber players, and then they add DeAndre Hunter, who I think is a really, really good 5th option to sort of round out that group. I mean, look at them. They got 44 wins at the All-Star break. I mean, all power to them, man. But that's a really good group. And then New York. New York doesn't have the same godly record maybe as Cleveland, and they don't have the depth to sort of pull that off. But when you're talking about the starting 5 is Jalen Brunson, when you're Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, and then Karl Anthony Towns. Like, Raptors, as much as they've added talent, does not compete with that. However, when you get past that, I can hear arguments for the rest of it. I really can. I think that, like, if we pull up the standings right now at the time of the All-Star break, Indiana is the 4th overall seed right now in the Eastern Conference, and they certainly have a good starting 5. But Tyrese Halliburton's been much more up and down. I would still rank him above IQ though. Pascal's been great this season, and all due respect to Brandon, but I think he's above Brandon Ingram right now. But past that, like the Raptors might be, I think a guy like Turner and Jakob, that's a closer matchup. If you want to prefer the spacing 5 as a more rare element, then sure. But I do think Jakob does a lot of stuff better than a guy like Turner does. And of course, it's not even a guarantee that Turner returns to their team because the Pacers get pretty expensive. And then it's like RJ versus Andrew Nembhard. I think RJ is actually better right now. And then, who matches up with Scottie, right? So, like, ultimately, I think that's closer. Milwaukee, yes, they have Giannis and Dame, which is a great start. And Brook Lopez, next season, I think he'll be a little older, whatever. But, like, I guess that's just how time works. But, I mean, that's still very much like a 3-man group. You know what I mean? Like, the other 2, I think the Raptors easily clear from 4 and 5. And, depending on sort of I can maybe hear Milwaukee is slightly better, but it's not a clear cut as it sort of used to be. Detroit, I mean, I don't even know how Detroit is above 500 right now, but still, I'm assuming with the healthy Raptors roster that's competitive at least. Orlando, again, you can make the case, but that's more on last year's case. Right now, they're 27 and 29. And if anything else, it's the history of it shows that they're actually maybe a little bit more of they are less than the sum of their parts, at least this season, which is really making me question how cohesive is that starting 5 actually. And then the rest of the teams are just wherever they are, you know what I mean? So yeah, like best case scenario, the Raptors could be in that conversation for like tier 2 in terms of starting 5s in the Eastern Conference. And especially with the age of the players that they have in that group, maybe with some upside to go even higher than that. But, for now, I think that's probably the highest I can go with that. So I appreciate those 2 questions, and I appreciate people for listening as well. We're going to take a quick break, hear from one of our sponsors, and when we come back, let's hand out the 3 stars. It's the 30th anniversary, and our friends at Axe are joining the celebration with a limited edition collection that's as original as the Toronto Raptors themselves.
The collection includes 3 essentials to keeping you fresh. The body spray features 48-hour high-definition scent, blending sea mist and grapefruit to keep you unstoppable throughout the day. The deodorant stick is perfect for staying confident, with a scent that keeps you smelling irresistible while showing your Raptors pride. And the body wash delivers a luxurious lather that leaves you feeling clean and smelling astonishing after every shower.
For over 40 years, Axe has drawn on body spray research and the expertise of the world's leading perfumers to craft quality fragrances and help people feel confident in their own skin.
Find the Axe Toronto Raptors 30th Anniversary Limited Edition collection at all major retailers, Walmart, Shoppers Drug Mart, and Real Canadian Superstore. But act fast because it's only available for a limited time.
Celebrate the milestone with Axe and the Toronto Raptors. Channel the freshness, energy, and unstoppable spirit of our local champions, because smelling great is always a slam dunk. Okay, it's time now for the freshest play of the game presented by Axe, and I'm not going to lie to you, there were not a lot of fresh plays in this one, and if there were, I probably did see most of them because, again, the Wi-Fi on the United flight was like 1 megabyte per second. It felt like I was back to the dial-up days. It was really a throwback. But there was one play that I thought was really cool, which was in the third quarter, Scottie got the rebound a long rebound, and there was a chance to throw it up ahead, but I was like, how is he going to be able to sort of beat the defense here? Because the Cavs are really good at getting back in transition. Scottie gets the rebound, and with one motion, scoops the rebound and just continues to sort of throw the ball over the top of his head along, the passage of play, and he throws it perfectly in stride to Emmanuel Quickly, who's breaking away from the pack, and on IQ catches it above the three-point line, doesn't even take a dribble, takes 2 huge steps, and then finger rolls it the last little bit to get into the rim. It's a really nice fast break layup, and just generally speaking, it was a really clever play. That, by the way, cut the lead from 75 to 52 in favor of the Cavs. So it was that type of night. But hey, listen, that play was still fresh, and shouts to Axe nonetheless. So your 3 stars to wrap up. Your first star is going to go to RJ Barrett. I mean, clearly he was the Raptors' best player tonight. He was very healthy. He was in a good mood. He spoke post-game. 27 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists on 11 of 18 shooting. Good for RJ. He's had a really strong half of a season, and hopefully he finishes the season strong too, because he's been a really good player this season. Your second star from tonight's game, I think Scottie didn't have like the 33-point outing, and he didn't dominate the paint nearly the same way as he did in the Sixers game. I think we all know why. I mean, you have Mobley and you have Allen. It's going to change things for you. The matchup's different, but he's still pretty impressive overall. 16 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, a steal, 3 blocks. He's been getting so many defensive plays of late, and he still shot the ball fine. 7 of 15 from the field, 2 of 3 from the foul line. I thought he did a decent job. You know what I mean? Like, he, don't look at the plus minus because it's nasty. It's at minus 32, but he still played a pretty good game. So I want to give him his credit. And then your third star, I'll give it to Jamison. 11 points, 4 rebounds, led a bit of a comeback. Raptors didn't even play Chris Boucher today, which, makes sense because they're trying to play younger guys and their team's getting healthier. So someone's got to come out the rotation, but still, it's still incumbent on those players to then take that chance. And I thought Jamison actually gave them a bit of a spark the way that Chris would have. So happy for Jamison. And, you're a Gerald Henderson Award winner. Go to a lot of places with this one, but I'll probably go with Tristan Thompson for making it about himself in a game that was not remotely about him. But, we all got something to do, and we got something out of it. So it was a fun one. Raptors go into the All-Star break here. We're going to have some coverage for you from All-Star weekend here. We are down here in San Francisco now. I'm going to try to get some sleep so that we actually have some energy to go out to all these incredible events. I'm really excited. So make sure you stay tuned to the Hello and Welcome podcast. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Drop some reviews on Apple, Spotify. Just get us higher in the charts, and then we can give you as much content as we possibly can here. And yes, you will be seeing the Norman Powell interview later this week. So thanks everyone for listening. This has been the Hello and Welcome podcast presented by Betway, and we'll catch you later.